Hi there, my name is Agustin Hernandez, and today I'm going to be presenting my CPE 233 final project. So, a little bit about my project. For my final project, I decided to focus on a quick game that utilized the LEDs, switches, and 7-segment display on the base ES3 board with VGA compatibility. Essentially, the player was presented with different patterns shown in a LED format and must match that same pattern with the switches on the board. During each attempt, the player is shown 5 different patterns to match. To prevent them from being sent back, the player must match that same pattern within a certain amount of time. If the time if they're not able to solve that pattern within a certain time, then the game sends them back to the beginning. The player is also presented with 3 different colors shown in a monitor display via the VGA cable. White meaning they have not started the game, red meaning they matched the pattern incorrectly via the switches, and green meaning pattern matches what was shown to them. To start the game, the user is presented with 2 options. One button is to start from the beginning, and the other is to essentially start the game. As mentioned before, here our center button is our reset button, basically letting the user start from the very beginning of the game, and then we have our topmost button which lets the user start the game. For the basic software architecture, there were 6 different blocks of code that made up the game. Without going into much detail, here are the 6 main important pieces of that made up the game. First off being the menu, the setup, the sequence, the LED sequence that was presented to the user, looking for that certain pattern that was presented to the user, and seeing if the user or player was able to match that same pattern using the switches, and when the switches were found, pattern matched, and a delayed block to create some sort of animation with the LEDs to look presentable. As for the functionality specification for this game, here are the following things the player must have. To power on the base ES3 board, the user must have a USB-A to micro B cable to power on the board so the pattern game is able to run smoothly. Along with the specified cable, a VGA cable will let the user see different color changes in the screen to show them whether the pattern they provided with the switches match the correct pattern shown to them. And finally, I'm going to demonstrate a live demo to show you guys how the game functions on the base ES3 board. Just give me a few seconds to set this up and I'll show you guys right now. So this is our live demo. To indicate that the user is in the main menu, we have LEDs flashing outward with a white background in our monitor to let the user know that they are in the main menu. First thing we're going to see is the start button of the game. To do this, we press on the upper top button and the pattern starts to be shown to the player. This this takes a few seconds. Once the pattern is done, the user has a limited amount of time to match that same pattern with the monitor display turning red. So let's let the game count down to 0 to see what happens. And it takes them back to the main menu since they didn't guess correctly. Let's see that again one more time just to show what happens. So the software goes through the pattern that the user must match, starts the countdown, display turns red since the game is continuously reading the switches. And let's put in the pattern that the game gave us and we should see that the display turns green. indicating that the pattern was matched. In order to get the next pattern in the game, we must turn off all the switches. We'll wait just a few seconds to see that the game doesn't move on if the switches are not flipped back to its original spot. As you can see, nothing's changing. The program does not move. Let's switch those switches back to its original place, and you'll see the program will start automatically. All right, there you go. Let's match the pattern. All right. And the countdown starts. Display turns red. Reading the switches to see if the user guesses a pattern correctly. Let's guess that pattern correctly again, and we'll see that the display turns green. There you go. Same thing, the game does not move forward until the switches are all turned off. Let's turn those switches off, and we'll see a new pattern emerge. So there you go, new pattern. And we guess that same pattern again, so the monitor display does not change color. We have to switch all the switches off to start the new pattern. Countdown starts. This time I'm going to let it count down to 0. We have a red display, and it should take us right back to the start of the game, as you can see. And there you go, we're at the very beginning again. Now the last thing we're going to test is the reset button. So let's start the game again. Let's match the pattern. Turns green. We guessed correctly. To move on to the next pattern, turn off all switches. Shows the next pattern. I'll wait for it to start counting down. Display turns red since the pattern hasn't been matched yet. And we could reset the game by pressing the center button, and it should take us to the beginning. There you go. That's one indication that the game is in the main menu and with a white display. And that's pretty much the pattern game that I created for my final project. Thanks for watching.